Welcome to the France 24 debate. I'm Mark Owen. The UK is facing shortages of fuel, and in spite of the placatory words and excuses from the authorities, it's getting messy. Confrontations, sometimes violent, on the forecourts of petrol stations that have run dry. BP, British Petroleum, says a third of its pumps have run dry of popular grades such as unleaded. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps blames the shortage of HGV drivers. The fuel can't be delivered to the pumps quickly enough. There is a shortage of some 100,000 drivers across the UK. The Road Hauliers Association blames an ageing workforce, with drivers taking retirement before the younger drivers can get qualified. And indeed, there have been some 40,000 HGV, that's heavy goods vehicle tests, that's if you want to drive a lorry, cancelled during the continuing COVID-19 pandemic. 3 weeks ago, the employers group, the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, no less, warned the UK must relax its new rules and make it easier for EU drivers to come and work on British roads to stem the supply shortfall. Well, let's take a listen now to the UK Prime Minister, Boris Johnson.
What we want to do is make sure that we have all the preparations necessary to get through till Christmas and beyond, not just in the supplying the petrol stations, but all parts of our supply chain. You're seeing the global economy really sucking in a huge amount of demand at the moment for gas, for lorry drivers. There are shortages around the world. It's affecting countries across the world, but we've got to make sure we have everything in place as the recovery continues, and that's what we're doing.
All I want for Christmas is a tank of petrol, could be the way to paraphrase what Boris Johnson was saying there. Clearly he's trying to get things sorted out, but some people are questioning his role in this entire mess. Brexit is being blamed by many for the current situation, none more so than France's Europe Minister Clément Beaune, who talks of Brexit as an intellectual fraud.
Every day we see the intellectual fraud that Brexit represented. Energy prices in the United Kingdom are still rising much faster than they are here, especially because many investments that are connected to ours have been called into question. And so you see that it isn't a Frexit or a Brexit that improves energy prices. We respond, for example, with the energy voucher. And on the issue of immigration, we must be serious about the subject. There have also been many lies and much manipulation. And now Boris Johnson, who promised zero immigration, is having to call upon European workers whom he had stigmatized.
It's true, energy prices are skyrocketing in the UK. People are even demonstrating to make the government insulate houses. The situation's becoming that bad. Let's bring in the panel, because you've heard enough from me, I'm sure. Here on the set, Anna Creti, Professor of Economics, Director of the Climate Economics Chair at Paris Dauphine University. Anna, thank you very much for joining us here in the studio. We appreciate you coming in. Joining us by Skype from Lancaster, up there in the fantastic northwest of England, not far from where I come from. Hilary Ingham, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Economics at Lancaster University, a place I know so well. Hilary, thank you for being with us. We'll be with you in a moment. Joining us by Skype from Loughborough there in central England, Samir Dani, Professor of Operations Management and Deputy Director of Keele Business School at Keele University, the Keele near Stoke-on-Trent. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And joining us by Skype from London, we have Morgan Schondelmeyer, who is Head of External Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute, joining us very shortly, I am assured. Things taking shape here, but let's not ask why things aren't working behind the scenes here. Let's get on to what's happening regarding the situation in the United Kingdom. Anna, I'll bring you in first to talk about this one. Some people say it's Brexit, some people say it's a driver shortage. Everybody seems to have an opinion about this one, but the fact of the matter is, lots of people can't get petrol for their cars.
Well, it is true that the combination of the several factors are playing against the situation, and when it comes to the budget of consumers who are reliant on in their daily life to use their cars, then we discover that there is dependence on our economy on fossil fuel and their usage. So I think that the debate must be somehow reversed. What is going on, which are the habits of people and why it has not changed, and what does it reveal about the organization on the economy. And then if we have perhaps an answer to this question, we may further understand which are the consequences on the economy of the Brexit that were somehow anticipated, but this is a stress test in reality, something that a contingency that, of course, was not considered when planning ahead of the real Brexit measure, what was going on and what was supposed to go on, especially in the materials or such as important as the energy is today.
So it sounds to me like you're saying there's a little bit of Brexit and a little bit of something else going on.
I think that the Brexit is a vector that is just exaggerating something else that is bigger than the Brexit itself.
Indeed, because lots of people are saying the government saw this coming, should have seen this coming and should have acted.
In the field of energy, they have started taking measures. They have started in 2019 because they were expecting the energy prices to rise, but perhaps not in the measure that we are experiencing today. They have put in place, in particular, some kind of price cap, that is, some tariffs that are trying to get the movement of the prices going, the spikes going up. But then there is an escalation. They move this price cap as long as the price rises and nothing is being stopped. So they have started understanding the mechanism, but the way in which they have responded to this mechanism is perhaps not the optimal one.
Anna Cretis, for now, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Lancaster, where Hilary Ingham is awaiting us, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Economics at Lancaster University. Hilary, you won't be surprised. My first question is, do you have a car? Have you managed to get it filled up with petrol?
Yes, I do. I was very fortunate that I filled it up before this actually came on board. So I actually had a full tank of petrol. But I've obviously driven around and I've seen very, very long queues outside certain petrol stations. But that said, I drove past one very early this morning that was open and there was nobody there at all. And that one did have fuel. But you do have to be a bit investigative and go around the country to find rather more obscure situations where you can fill up.
What we're seeing in terms of the news footage, and sometimes news footage, and I'll be the first to admit this as a journalist, sometimes news footage can be a little bit misleading. Are you finding in your driving round that there is kind of a situation like is being reflected by the news channels?
Well, I think once the possibility of fuel shortages were reported, then I think it triggered panic buying. And I think the government have tried to put out the message that there is enough fuel. It's just a case of getting it to the right locations. And indeed, they've reduced the sort of competitive element so that tankers can actually deliver to other outlets as opposed to the ones they're normally tied to. But it doesn't seem to be stopping people feeling that they are going to be running out of fuel and have to go and fill their cars up immediately. And indeed, today it has been announced by the government that we are likely to see this situation continuing for a number of days. So I don't think we're actually out of the woods on this one yet.
Hilary, for the
and
moment.
Of course, there is the issue now,
Please finish what you said. I'm sorry, I cut across you. Please finish.
I was just going to say, the issue that's rising now is should there be some sort of prioritisation? So should doctors, for example, be given priority so that they can get to their place of work and do operations? Similarly, like social care workers who are going out to the elderly in their homes. So for some people, this is really going to cause serious problems.
Indeed. I think what you just suggested there is a no-brainer, Hilary. It should happen. These people should be given priority. The question is, though, if there's no fuel at the pumps, where can they get it from? That's the issue, I suppose. Sorry for cutting across you there. Hilary, thank you very much indeed. Let's bring in from Loughborough, Samir Dani, Professor of Operations Management and Deputy Director of the Kiel Business School. Samir, Grant Shapps has just said water bottles shouldn't be used in petrol stations to buy fuel. This kind of indicates how desperate some people are getting. He also says that the problem is due to the coronavirus. What do you think?
So it's a multitude of problems happening at the same time. It's like the high tides left, the low tides happened, and we are seeing the problems coming out now. There is Brexit, of course. There has been an exodus of EU drivers, about 14,000 of them in the last, I would say, 18 months. And then we have got people coming out now of the lockdown, and everybody wants to get out and get to the office and work and so on and so forth. So as soon as the kind of panic button scenario happened and the social media erupted with the fuel prices impending, then we saw a dash to the petrol stations, which created a sudden spike in demand, which then could not be fulfilled immediately through the supply chain. Of course, in terms of the driver shortage, there has been a driver shortage in the UK since 2013. We've had discussions in 2013. We've had discussions in 2016. Of course, they were brushed under the carpet because there was a free movement of people from the EU, and supposedly it was taken care of. But now we have to think differently. And we have to think about what is available in the country. And as one report goes, there are about 230,000 people with HGV licenses at the moment who are not a part of the industry because they thought it's not worthwhile getting in, or they kind of felt left out. And these people are under the age of 45. So it is not that we don't have the skill sets. It's perhaps the kind of working conditions we have, or the structure of the haulage economy. I think we need to change those. We need to rethink those, and we should be able to take care of it. Of course, there is this another issue about a short-term solution. We need a short-term solution now, and then we need to start discussing more long-term approaches to how we take care of these situations. And as Anna said previously, we have to start thinking about sustainability. We have to start thinking about alternative means to overcome this, not happening in the future.
I can see your logical solutions, Dan. I can see why you work in operations management. A very clear and logical approach. Thank you, Sammy. I'll get back to you very shortly. Let's go to London. Morgan Schondelmeyer joins us from there. Morgan is Head of External Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. Thanks for joining us. Lovely to see you. The CBI, Confederation of British Industry, saying that the rules have to be relaxed to allow EU drivers to come into the UK to help ease this crisis. But someone from the Dutch Road Hauliers Association said, I think about 24, 36 hours ago, if you think EU drivers are going to go and help out and get you out of the mess you've created, you British people, it isn't going to happen. He didn't say mess. He was actually quite rude in what he said. I won't quote it because this is a polite programme. This really is is it a mess of Britain's own making, Morgan? What do you think?
I think what some of my fellow guests here have said is this isn't entirely a Brexit issue. COVID is playing a huge role right now, and we need to be honest about that fact. I don't think you can just say just because of Brexit we have this shortage of drivers. I think in 2020 we peaked at 14% of EU drivers in the UK as part of the industry, so that's not a huge proportion. Certainly, Brexit and COVID will have exacerbated these shortages. But I think, as again, my fellow guests have pointed out, is we need to address the actual internal workings of the HGV sector in the UK, making sure that we have enough training, enough people staying on. We are addressing the problems of HGV drivers retiring and not enough young people wanting to take up the profession. And that's not going to be down to Brexit. That's going to be down to how do we structure our HGV sector to be a sustainable industry that will overcome an aging population and a lack of interest, frankly.
It is a tough job driving a lorry. Let's face it. I know people who do it. It isn't a walk in the park. Some 40,000 HGV, heavy goods vehicle, driver training tests were cancelled due to the pandemic. That's the COVID side of it. Some 20,000 European drivers left because of Brexit. That's the other side of it. Fundamentally, Brexit is really sort of like scuppered in many ways the whole system, hasn't it?
Again, I wouldn't say that it's scuppered the whole system. The shortages have been around since 2013, as we just heard. So if you have European drivers going back to their home countries, again, this is something that has been exacerbated by COVID as well. I'm not going to sit here and say that Brexit doesn't have an impact. It absolutely does. But we need to be honest about the fact that those people that left year to date 2020, March 2020, you can't say for sure whether or not they left because of COVID or Brexit. I think we need to be very clear that blaming Brexit isn't going to get anything accomplished. What we can do now is realize that the British people have voted this way. Let's examine the problems that are arising and problems that have been systemic for many years and figure out the tools in our kit now that we can use to fix this.
I hear what you're saying, Morgan. You've been very pragmatic about it. I think it's a pragmatic approach. It's going to solve this whole situation. However, it isn't going to happen overnight, Anna, is it? There's no overnight sort of solution to this. I mean, Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary in the UK, talking about now that Britain is in the EU, they can make it they can make it easier to qualify as an HGV driver. Now, I'm not taking sides, but anything that makes it easier implies that perhaps it's not as rigorous, and something like driving a heavy goods vehicle is not like driving, say, a delivery van. I can drive a delivery van because I've got a normal license. I can't drive an HGV.
I won't do it. I think it is too complex. But
it's difficult. It's a real skill.
Yeah. Well, in any case, it is something that in economics we call the battle of standards. The UK have always presented their own view. Let's think, for instance, the fact that they don't have the same appliances in electricity appliances as we do have in Europe, even before the Brexit. So they have their own view on what it is the norm, what it is the constraint that they want to impose into the system. Now they have decided that further they have different rules in delivering the licenses. I think it was not the good timing for deciding to be restrictive. They should have allowed a longer period to adjust in the economy. And then, of course, the pandemic has created additional problems. But we didn't see such massive displacement of people in these kind of jobs in other countries in Europe. So supposedly there was a bad combination of deciding to restrict the access of this kind of jobs that are still very important because, petrol moves with vans and with machines. There are not the pipelines that are going to deliver automatically oil at the last mile. So, you change all the cards at the same time, and then this is going to create a short time and short periods, perhaps, crisis.
Anna, thank you very much indeed. It feels like time to take a very short break. After that, part two of what's happening to the petrol in the UK. Stay with us. Welcome back to the France 24 debate, the petrol shortage in the UK. I carried out my own little survey via my social media account, asking the question, do you blame Brexit or do you blame panic buying? 77% of respondents, to my very small survey, I must admit, said they blame Brexit. So there's a bit of a leaning there, but that could be sort of mired by anything, couldn't it? Let's face it. So it's not just petrol, though, is it, in the UK? There are shortages, empty supermarket shelves, soaring energy bills, as we've hinted at as well. The Financial Times has urged Boris Johnson to use his own franglais term and prenez un grip, get a grip, because his reshuffled cabinet is less and less seen to be taking back control on this matter. Let's take a look at our report.
As Britain queues for petrol for a fifth day, the government stated there were signs of stabilisation, though continued to blame panic buying for worsening shortages.
As long as we all go back to our normal habits, then normality will return much quicker. Unfortunately, as we've seen with toilet rolls and other things, once people start to pursue a particular item, it can quickly escalate.
While fuel is available at refineries, there aren't enough lorry drivers to get it to where it's needed, a result of people leaving the industry during COVID and foreign drivers returning to Europe following Brexit. With supply chains up and down the country reaching breaking point, there were calls for healthcare staff and other essential workers to get priority.
We can't leave people. We've got to be able to get to them. Otherwise, people may die without that help. When there have been fuel shortages in the past, vouchers have been issued to home care workers so that the fuel retailers know who is eligible and who isn't.
It's estimated the UK is missing 100,000 drivers across its freight haulage sector. Authorities have even put military drivers on standby and offered thousands of emergency short-term visas to workers in the European Union, though industry professionals think there's little appetite there to help out.
Who will quit a job in the EU for a 3-month visa in the UK? Do they really think we go to the UK and lose our job on Christmas Eve after the job is done? So, yeah, I think it's unrealistic to think that drivers will come now on a massive scale.
The UK is due to see new trainees enter the system, but not until they're fully licensed after the new year.
Luke Strogo with that one. Grant Shapps, the latest from him. We are starting to see stabilisation. About time too. Many people may be saying there have been horrible scenes on some forecourts of terrible behaviour by people, violence, reports of knives being pulled, fists being thrown. It really just doesn't befit the kind of behaviour you like to see in a normal civilised society. But the situation with shortages is like that. People act in extreme ways. Let's introduce our guests again for this debate. Anna Creti, Professor of Economics, Director of the Climate Economics Chair, Paris Dauphine University. Thank you for being with us. Joining us from afar in Lancaster, Northwest England, Hilary Ingham, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Economics at Lancaster University. Hilary, thanks for waiting for us. In Loughborough, UK, Samir Dani, Professor of Operations Management and Deputy Director of the Keele Business School at Keele University. Samir, thanks for being with us. And by Skype from London, Morgan Schondelmeyer, who is the Head of External Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. Morgan, thanks for being with us. Great to see you. The situation, to all my guests here, we're looking for a solution. Whether we'll find one completely, I don't know. But Simon Shapps saying things are starting to stabilise. Some might say, Anna, it should never have come to this in the first place. The government should have seen this coming.
I don't know if the government really is going to catch up with what is going on the economic side. And then we have to question whether we want the government to intervene in the economy. I do not think that this is the bottom line, especially in the UK. So,
which is more free market sort of philosophy.
Yes. So at the same time, it is their choice. So they cannot just advocate the government to intervene when there is tension and to get the hands away when everything is going on, let's say, quite quickly. So the question is whether for the energy, oil, and these kind of commodities that are, as I was saying, essential in the daily life, there is like a paradox that they want to go on and to admit that for those commodities, an oversight from the government has to be accepted, and which is the vulnerability also of the economy to the increasing prices of energy, which is the portion of the population that is going to suffer, which are the equity effect of increasing the energy and the oil prices. So it is something that if you want to bring equity in the sense of the policy intervention, then yes, you have to say that the government should be there and should anticipate this kind of effect. On the other side, the UK has been the champion of liberalizing and opening the competition, the energy market, and also they have championed in producing on the oil market. And they have said, this is the free market. We are not going to intervene. And there has been a lot of movement also in the suppliers, in the producers, in both the electricity and the gas sector. So as long as the market has functioned, they were just saying, well, we are there just setting some rules of the game. Now they want the government to intervene. It is possible, but it's going to change drastically the way in which the energy sector is also managed. So are they ready to do so? It is the point.
Let's go to London to Morgan Schondelmeyer from the Adam Smith Institute, Head of External Affairs there. Morgan, I know we're not going to get hooked on a Brexit discussion here because you've quite clearly pointed out that we need to find a pragmatic way ahead. And obviously Brexit's part of it, and there are other aspects as well in there too. But there is a change of kind of narrative coming from certain newspapers in the UK now that we're very pro-Brexit. They're saying things need to be relaxed in order to bring workers into the country. It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The Adam Smith Institute has always been a proponent of free movement, whether that's with the EU or other countries. So it is interesting to see this kind of take back control narrative being moved into, we're desperate for workers. But I think that was the point. As someone looking from the outside for Brexit, I'm American. Seeing the Brexit idea, it was more of a, we want to end free movement to allow us to tweak the rules as we see fit. That's a fair point, but the government now needs to take the policies and actually enact them and understand that if they're going to put in an immigration system which makes it harder for people to come to the UK, they're going to need to adjust our policy responses domestically to make sure that we don't experience the shortages we are right now. As Anna said.
I'm sorry, Morgan. In the famous taking back control narrative, have they failed to apply sort of the things that maybe you would have wanted to apply? The idea of freedom of movement, the idea of a real openness, by actually sort of really boxing the UK in some way into a smaller market, into a smaller position in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big issues with the new immigration rules is that they are incredibly restrictive. People like myself wouldn't have been able to stay in the UK because I wouldn't have met the requirements. Whether or not the Brits think that would be a good idea, it's not for me to say. But I think there are so many places where the UK could be more flexible. They could do reciprocal recognition of skills and qualifications so that people who are trained abroad can come work in the UK. You could add more industries to the shortage occupation list, like HGV drivers, for example. There are so many things that the UK could have done to open up the borders and allow people to come in and work and contribute to the UK. And unfortunately, they've decided to go with a more complicated, complex, and expensive process for workers to come into the UK. And if we don't have the domestic policy to counteract that, then we will see these bumps in the road.
Indeed. Morgan, for now, thank you very much indeed. A system that's politically unworkable, or politically imposed system that's unworkable. And clearly what we're seeing here are shortages of skills that's creating a situation where petrol can't be got to the pumps. Now, whether you blame Brexit or whether you blame another issue, that's obviously up to you. Pays your money, takes your choice. But what we're identifying is that we need to get people to do certain jobs, and we can't. Samir Dani, can I bring you back in as Professor of Operations Management, sir? What would your solution be? What would you do, the one thing you'd do to try to resolve the scenario?
I think it's not only about one thing. First thing is the short term. We need a short-term solution to balance the supply-demand issue at the moment for fuel. And just we have done 18 months of a lockdown. We've come out of COVID to an extent. We were not in the offices, so I don't understand that everybody has to just jump out and get out into the offices, and we need to drive cars. So if we want to relax this spike at the moment, we could those people who really do not need to get out right now, like the care workers or the special workers in the sense, they can stay at home and still work, and we don't really need to get out in our cars at the moment. So there may be a short-term solution to easing that spike at the moment.
Home working, you're saying that's the thing. Télétravail, they call it in France. Because, I've noticed the same thing, sort of commuting into Paris for my working day. I had to work during all through the lockdown because of my job, because I needed to be in the studio to do the news. But the thing is, then it was, 2 or 3 cars on the road. Now it's like nose to tail, and it's chaos. We're back to how it was pre-pandemic, which seems kind of ridiculous.
It's worse.
Absolutely. So we need to learn from that. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Samir.
I just said we need to learn from that experience, and we have been talking about the new normal, and we've been talking about hybrid working, and then suddenly we all want to get out. So that spike can, we could work there. But I think one of the bigger questions, whether we talk about Brexit, whether we talk about taking back control, as the previous speaker said, we need a cultural change. We can't just do policy work. We have to have a cultural change from the grassroots to say that we want to change this for the country. Only then things can happen. So it is both ways. I think people and the government have to work hand in hand to make sure that whatever Brexit happened, we can't do anything about it, but that it does not lead to further issues downstream.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I bring Hilary back in from Lancaster? Hilary, we heard you say in part one about the necessity to make sure this happens, i.e. supply gets to petrol stations so people aren't put at risk. We heard in our report just a moment ago a care worker talking about her concerns that possibly if this continues, people will be put at risk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it obviously is very important. I mean, one of the things the Mayor said was that obviously we have had a lot of hybrid working. We've been at home for a good number of months, but all of a sudden people do seem to want to get back into their cars. I'm actually not certain that a lot of this car usage is necessarily linked to work, because certainly in the UK, there's a considerable amount of home working continuing, even in big organisations in London and, the civil service, for example. So clearly, I think we do have to rein back a bit on what we're demanding in terms of fuel. And I mean, the other short-term thing is that, as Samir said in the first part of the programme, there are actually trained HGV drivers that are out there but not currently working in that area. So it clearly isn't an attractive profession. So in the short term, improving wages, because at the end of the day, it's a very skilled occupation. It's not it's a very difficult thing to drive an HGV. It's also very dangerous. So there's huge safety concerns if you have people with shortened training and not the proper skills. But in the short term, if we increase the wages, made the working conditions more attractive, possibly we could bring some people back into the market, because also, as Samir said, this is a long-standing problem, and it's actually not a UK problem, because if you go back to 2019, pre-COVID, okay, in the UK, there were 24% of HGV jobs unfilled, but there were 20% in Spain and 22% in Poland. So we weren't actually massively out of line. It's just that the Brexit issue has sort of had a cumulative effect. And we're in the position that we're in now. But my understanding is that HGV driving is going to become a shortage occupation. I think it can be made more attractive, certainly in terms of the pay that is offered. And in the UK now, many companies are offering big, signing on fees. I don't think the 3-month visas are going to be attractive, but I don't think it's enough. I mean, as was in the report, why would an EU HGV driver give up a job only to come to the UK for 3 months, then to find themselves without work right in the Christmas Eve? So I don't think that is going to be the solution. So I think in the short term, possibly increasing wages to bring some people back on board, and then in the longer term, we've also got to think, how can we make this, a more attractive occupation? I mean, there are almost no female HGV drivers.
Indeed, indeed. And I will say women drivers are far better than male drivers. I'm not just saying that because my other half is a far better driver than me, but I think it's something I've observed. There's a far better attitude among female drivers than male drivers. So, power to their elbow. And I think you've got a point there, Hilary, about getting more women into this occupation. I think it might actually do the world a power of good. Anna, you had a comment.
Yes, perhaps I'm raising a question, but one short-term solution could also to switch from private to public transportation. So at least give some incentive to change the mode of transportation. And the question is there enough investment in infrastructure in terms of connecting people from home to work or also leisure? I was used to live in the UK, and I think that perhaps there is something to improve in terms of public infrastructure in transportation.
And one of the issues is that people will say to you, ordinary people, that if you want to travel by train in the UK, it's exorbitant. It costs a heck of a lot of money.
That is why I'm saying there is perhaps something else that can be done in optimizing the transport system, which is not only relying on private transportation, decreasing the price and improving the quality of the public transportation system in the UK is an issue.
Morgan, sorry to pick on you again from the Adam Smith Institute, but is that all because the railways were deregulated, thrown out to the free market?
No, I don't think so. I think that there's been very little investment in rail, bus, all sorts of connectivity.
I'm talking prices here, Morgan. I'm talking the prices. I mean, to take a train, it's incredibly expensive in the UK.
Okay. I was talking about connectivity, but in terms of prices, one of the reasons why prices aren't competitive on the train lines is because only one train company is allowed to run trains on the train line. You can't compete on the train line at different times. So if we were able to fix that and allow different companies to actually compete on the same routes, as opposed to one train company has a monopoly from here to there, then you would see a decrease in prices. Interesting
perspective. Samir, you were trying to get in. I think I cut you off. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. I was just saying, because we're discussing about rail. It's also important long term as we start looking at decarbonization and sustainability, net zero requirements. Can we transfer some of our road freight requirements onto rail freight, for example? That again alleviates some of the HGV driver shortage issues to an extent. And the other aspect is that this is not a problem only of the UK. I was just reading a report, an article today saying that Poland is now opening up visas for non-EU HGV drivers from Ukraine and Belarus and even far afar to try and fill up those gaps. there's a lot of other scenarios happening across EU at the moment. So I think this is not something that can have a short-term solution. We really need to think hard about how we're going to restructure the whole freight transportation system in order to make it more green and clean.
Hear what you're saying, Sammy, and obviously green and clean is a very important thing. Sammy, can I stay with you? And just, sort of you mentioned that, of course, this is a problem across the EU. I'm told it's a similar issue in the United States as well, a shortage of qualified heavy goods vehicle drivers, or lorry drivers, if you like. But we're seeing the shortages in the UK. We're not seeing the shortages across Europe, are we?
No, we are not. Perhaps they've not come out at the moment, but you never know, because Poland, as I said, has just opened up the visas for non-EU nationals. And if EU needs to go across their borders, that means there is clearly a problem. At the moment, it may not resurface for empty shells or fuel, but clearly they are able to sort it out amongst the other nations to an extent. But this will come up. I think we are just unfortunate it's come up right now in the UK, and all eyes are set on us at the moment after post-COVID. But you never know. You never know.
My producer's telling me we're out of time, but I'm going to take more time because there's more to say. Hilary Ingham from Lancaster, come back in, please, and give us your thoughts about the fact that some countries experience a shortage, i.e. the UK, other countries aren't. For instance, in France, I can drive past any number of petrol stations here. I can fill up my car.
Well, obviously, we have got very serious shortages because we are led to believe that there is the fuel available in the country, but it is the difficulty of actually getting it to the distribution places, i.e. the petrol pumps. And I mean, I completely agree, what we've been talking about here about, do we need such reliance on road haulage because it's obviously not very green? Can we have more reliance on rail? But obviously, for passengers, railing, the expense is incredibly expensive for the reasons Morgan has actually said. And also, it's quite difficult in the UK to go from west to east. So most of the things are, structured to go north-south. So, but I mean, even if we can move away from some road haulage, you've still got to actually get things like petrol actually to the pumps. I mean, you can only have major rail hubs. You're still going to need HGV drivers to move it. I mean, and I think essentially the UK has been too restrictive on the people that it is allowing to come in and work and live in this country. And I think for some European drivers, it would be attractive now if we were to open up more. But I don't think a short-term 3-month offer is going to be at all attractive. I think it would have to be longer term, with the right to permanently settle and access to all services that everybody here gets.
Hilary Ingham in Lancaster, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to Sammy Downey joining us from Loughborough from the Kiel Business School. Thank you to Morgan Schondelmeyer, Head of External Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. Thank you very much indeed. And thanks to my guest here in the studio, Anna Coretti, Professor of Economics, Director of the Climate Economics Chair at the Paris Dauphine University. Thank you very much indeed. Most of all, thanks to you for watching. Do stay with us. More to come here on France 24.